What is up, friends? Rob Sevilla here, and I'm back with a brand new Spitting Fire Leadership podcast for all of you today. And today I got my man, Mr. Kenny Lammons. Will you say what's up, Kenny, to everybody real quickly?
What's up, guys? Kenny Lammons with Medicare Millennials. So glad to be here with Rob today.
Absolutely. And I know you're going to bring some serious value today and spit some serious fire. But before we dive into that, I want to remind all of you why I interview leaders across the country, not only in the insurance space, in which Kenny and I are in, but in different spaces. And it's because I believe that all of you were created on purpose for a purpose. And I believe there's a divine creator who has called all of you, or I should say it this way, put a leader inside of all of you. And I pray something that Kenny says today or that we discuss together will inspire you, like deeply inspire you to start living on purpose in 2022. So Kenny, once again, thanks for being here, my man. And listen, as we kick this thing off, I always like our guests to just give us a 30,000 foot view of their story. Can you give us a little bit about where you're from, where you come from, a little bit of that transitional season up to what you're doing today?
Sure. I'll give you the condensed version. So I grew up in a small town in the panhandle of Texas. So very rural area near Amarillo, Texas. I did fairly well academically in high school. So once I shook off all the trouble that I made, and I made plenty of it, I'd made my way to college. I ended up going to school ultimately at the University of Arkansas, where I studied accounting and I minored in Spanish, actually. And it's kind of funny. I worked really hard through college to have a high GPA when I graduated with my accounting degree, because every accounting student wants to be recruited by what are called the Big Four accounting firms. Right. And I got an internship, which usually leads to an offer, which it did. And when you get an offer, you need to go back to school for one more year, get your master's, and then take your CPA exam, and you've got a job with one of the Big Four in a big city across the country. And I was on my way to that. Finished my internship, got an offer, and God works in kind of funny ways. But I actually believe this was more just immaturity and straying. But I said, I'm done with college. I graduated, turning down that offer, and my brother hooked me up with a job in the oil field. So I went out and worked in the oil field for a big company called Halliburton, and had a really good job for a 21-year-old kid or 22-year-old kid, whatever I was. Did that for about a year and was doing really well. I actually really enjoyed it. It was a cool job, and paid really well for where I was at in life. But that was right before there was a big shakeup with the oil markets. It was above my head. I just knew I probably wasn't going to have a job very long. Ended up in Dallas, where I reunited with my longtime high school sweetheart, who's now my wife. And we met in Dallas, and we're living together, and I was looking for what I was going to do next. And I got recruited to an insurance gig. Okay. So I always knew I'd be a good salesperson. In fact, the reason I didn't go into accounting was because I'm too much of a talker. I'm not an introvert by any stretch. Was recruited into a captive insurance agency, but it was kind of unique in that it was a captive agency. You had to have all your contracts there. Your commissions were LOA to the agency, right? You didn't own the book, but they were still an independent, like we sold multiple carriers still, right? Sure. So that style of captive agency. Sure. In that, I learned how to sell mostly final expense, but they did a little bit of everything. So I've sold more than 2 hands worth of annuities. I've sold more than 2 fingers worth of ULs and IULs. I never would call myself an absolute expert in those areas, but I'm dangerous, or I know a little bit about that.
Right.
And I sold a pretty good amount of Medicare supplements, but the main thing we focused on, the bread and butter, was final expense life insurance. Gotcha. And after a couple of years, I became a 6-figure producer at a 60-point contract. So I was doing well.
Wow. Yeah.
Training and recruiting agents for this agency. Didn't realize that I was more or less just doing that for free, because my override was practically nothing.
Right.
But I learned a lot at this experience. I established a foundation. I established a foundation of sales skills and a love for helping teach other people how to be successful at this craft.
Sure.
a buddy that I'd recruited into this business, his name's Ethan. He's a fellow Medicare millennial. A lot of you know.
Okay.
He became my business partner. We left that captive agency. We wandered through the desert for 1.5 to 2 years trying to figure out what's an LLC? How do you get independent contracts? Holy crap, life insurance commissions go over 100%. Like, these were all things we knew nothing about. And to sum it up, a little over 3 years ago, we found Medicare Advantage. We felt compelled that was the niche for us. We still sell a lot of ancillary products that go with Medicare. We still sell final expense, Med Sup, but we sell a lot of Med Advantage. And thankfully now we're at a point where we train and recruit agents as well that like the way we do business in the Medicare space. So I hope that's what you were looking for. I hope that wasn't too short or too long there, but that's my background.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to go back to the LOA captive agency, because there's a lot of agents that may be watching this. Because like I said, we don't just cater here to this channel to insurance alone. But what was a big takeaway that you took away from being an LOA that helped you be successful in owning your own thing today?
2 things. Okay. Number one, I learned a lot as a young man in that situation about trade-offs. Okay.
Right.
When you enter into an LOA situation, which means that you're assigning the commission and the ownership of the future commissions that you write to somebody else.
Right.
In order to do that, there needs to be a darn good reason to do that. Okay. So there needs to be a trade-off that makes a lot of sense for both parties. Sure. Unfortunately, as I matured in the business and in my position there, what I learned was what they were giving me in order for me to exchange the ownership and a large part of the commission wasn't an equitable deal for me where I was at. I am not here saying that it can't ever be a good and equitable, fair compromise, but I learned that, unfortunately, I learned the hard way that you've got to read the fine print. You've got to have the courage to talk to who you're going to work with in a frank way, like what's in it for you, what's in it for me. Let's be on the same page. What's the trade-off? If somebody is selling you a car, piece of jewelry, a service, or an opportunity, and they can't give you both pros and cons, run away. Because there's always pros and cons, and that's okay. Sure. There's trade-offs in life.
Sure.
I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's what I learned. I took a lot away from that. To look at those type of things. So what was the why, like the deepest why behind the Medicare Millennials? Was it so you could recruit? Was it so you could train? Was it so you could teach some of these lessons that you've learned and maybe save them from going through some pitfalls? So first of all, we had no intention on recruiting agents when we first left the captive environment. We really were my business partner and I we're still pretty young, but we were in our 20s, weren't even married yet at that time, no kids. And we really just wanted more freedom. And we knew if we just went out and grinded that we could get a bigger commission, bigger renewals, and just have more freedom. And we had trained and recruited so hard for this agency for nothing to show for it. It burned us out a little bit. For several years, we were burnt out on that. So when we left, it was more just like, hey, purely financial, no hard feelings. Gotcha. We can do better just going independent. We know we can. And be more nimble and do things our way. That evolved. And eventually my hardened heart towards training and recruiting and helping other agents softened. And I was sitting there in the middle of the pandemic, having to do phone sales, which I personally don't like. It's just, I like to meet people face to face. Yep. I had all this extra free time, said, Ethan, dude, let's put these young faces on camera, man. It'll be fun. Let's just throw some YouTube videos out there. I mean, if David Duford can do it, we can do it.
Sure.
We were just casting stones at a lake, just seeing what happened. And lo and behold, it seemed that we resonated with people, whether it was that we were a young, fresh, excited face and attitude, whether it was that we were very open and honest and real, I believe. it started to resonate. And that's when we started to develop and formulate a desire to actually move forward with Medicare Millennials to where
Sure. So tell me real quickly a little bit of stats of your channels. Like when you've been doing that now for a little bit, what kind of stats are you seeing on your channel, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. Let me just go to lifetime mode here. I'm obviously not sharing my screen. So my first video was on March 21st of 2020.
Okay.
So a little over 2 years ago.
Sure.
And on that day when the first video released, I had 0 views.
Right.
And then, you know what, to be honest with you, it was like, let me just kind of give you this. This is kind of funny. Okay. So mind you, in March of 2020, you know, these are daily views: 7, 32, 17, 38, 60. So it kind of stagnated and had a few spikes over 100 the first 6 months. And then what I saw happened after the first 6 months of putting 2 to 4 videos out per week was we started gaining a little bit of traction, and you see a bit of a spike. And so right at the very end of 2020, our average daily views spiked up to more around 200 to 300 views per day.
Wow.
And that's when the light bulb went off. I said, okay, this is catching traction. Let's try to make the videos a little more quality. Let's keep putting out the same type of content, but try to be a little wiser with the naming of our videos so that agents could find what they were looking for, find what we were putting out.
Sure.
I also did some I went and got on some other channels to get my name out there. And let's see, the big spike here was in April of 2021. And on that day, it spiked up to about 533 views per day. And it stuck around there. So now where we're sitting now, let me just put that into real life terms. We get about 8,000 unique views per month.
Wow.
Okay. And our watch time is about 800 hours a month of watch time. And we're gaining about 150 to 200 subscribers every 28 days. And
Wow.
we've got nearly 3,000 subscribers right now. So
Nice.
This is a niche market. I'm very excited about that type of growth in such a niche market. And when I say this, I mean the Medicare agent, senior market insurance agent niche that my channel resides in.
Sure.
So that's kind of, you know, it wasn't linear, but there was just a couple small spikes.
Sure.
Kind of looks like a staircase.
Yeah. And I want to stop here for a minute, because if you're watching this today, when this drops in a couple of weeks, I think there's a lot of nuggets here that you can take away. Some of you are not sharing your message with the world, right? And I believe that all of you have a message. You may be saying, well, Rob, I don't have anything to say. Yes, there's someone who needs to hear your voice. I believe God gave you a unique gift or gifts. And maybe you need to put it on video today, just like Kenny said. Listen, it's taking massive imperfect action. It's putting it out there. And then as you put it out there, or casting stones, to throwing spaghetti at the wall, so to speak, you begin to mature, you begin to evolve, you begin to learn. But it's interesting that when you start just planting seeds, that a harvest eventually will come. So thank you for sharing that. And maybe you've inspired someone just to say, you know what, I just need to get the webcam out and just start sharing with people what I've learned on camera.
Do you mind because since you said that, now it makes me think, I really never said why I'm doing this, why it excites me, and what message I'm trying to get across. So we named our channel Medicare Millennials, which is super cheesy. It's, an alliteration that has the word Medicare in it, but here's why. We were looking around the massive opportunity in the senior market insurance space with the baby boomers. We were looking around at how the average age of an agent was, in like their 50s. And certainly the average age of anybody that might encourage you to get into this business or recruit you or train you was really way up there in numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you look at my generation, people age maybe 22 to like 35, kind of that millennial age range roughly, of people saying, I'm up to my neck in student loan debts. employers just don't take care of their employees the way they used to, can't find a good job based on I'm overqualified. And I truly felt compelled to say, hey, look, me and my business partner are just a couple of dummies. One of us done, we both have college degrees and college debt. And this massive opportunity is waiting for you too. It's fun. It's exciting. It's servant-based work with unlimited upside. So I wanted to share that message with young folks. I want to help young folks like myself get introduced to this opportunity before they get sucked into corporate America or a job that they personally hate. And number two, I wanted to be grossly authentic with people about the way this business works. I don't always memorize my numbers exactly.
Sure.
But what I don't do is give fake big numbers, right? Like I want to give people an accurate view of the money I spend on leads, the income that I generate from that, and so forth. So those are the two things. I really want to be authentic and real with people about the opportunity, and I want to reach young people about this opportunity. So
no, and I know, once again, if you're watching this today, we don't just cater to the insurance, arena on this channel, but today we're speaking a little Medicare needs, a little insurance needs, if you will, and that authenticity in any space is needed. And as you well know, Kenny, a lot of times it's about a celebrity status in our space, and things are fabricated or things are shared that are not necessarily true. And the good news is, if you're willing just to show up and do what's necessary and grow and evolve, it can be a very rewarding career for you. So I appreciate you doing that. I know I've watched several of your videos and have learned some things as well. Let me ask you something. What's one leadership principle or trait that you have really learned over the past, several years, or maybe throughout your life, that now that you apply to your own life, but you lead others from? Is there one that just rises at the top from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, there could I could come up with several things, but the first thing that comes to mind is relationships. And that sounds so cheesy but the world is so interconnected now in anything that we do, right? Through social media.
Sure.
But at the same time, I would argue that a lot of people are lonelier than they've ever been, and that's because while social media can be a blessing in many ways, it can also be a curse in that it can be very superficial. And so you can feel like you have a lot of friends, a lot of followers, a lot of conversations, but it feels superficial. You don't truly feel close to those people all the time. Or maybe if you're pursuing an opportunity, you feel like an outsider looking in. And so as a leader today, I think this has always been true, but today specifically, you can separate yourself and truly lead men and women if you're willing to get to know them and have a personal relationship with them. Let them know that they as an individual matter. They're not a follower. They're not a like button. They're not a thumbs up. They're not a message me in my DMs. Like, you're a real person. You can call me. I'd love to get together for lunch. I'd love to get to know your goals, your hopes, your dreams. And just connecting with people in a real, again, authentic way. That to me really defines a good leader, and just in my view. So.
No, I agree. I think a lot of leaders, once again, sacrifice that authenticity on the altar of wanting to be a celebrity, right? Or wanting to be a big shot, if you will. So no, I definitely believe relationships are really important. For you personally, what is one of the biggest breakthroughs? And I know we all have multiple breakthroughs, but is there a season in your life where you go, this was really a breakthrough for me that has contributed to the success that I'm having today?
Would you more specifically personally or professionally?
Either or, whichever you feel comfortable sharing.
I gotta say, and I guess this is a safe space to share it, because won't offend anybody on that's probably watching this channel, but honestly, it was probably becoming a Christian. I've never been like an atheist, so to speak, but I did not grow up in the church. In fact, I had a relatively negative view on whatever religion was supposed to be most of my life.
Sure.
And so, I just found a new purpose and a new foundation. I was, I'd like to think that I was always a good person, but when I really look back on it, I didn't have much of a moral foundation. So I would find myself treading or, messing around in the shallow end, but then slowly wading over to the deep end from just a general kind of moral and direction in my life. And so that really changed when I actually understood who Jesus Christ was, and what that meant, not from a religious standpoint, but from a real standpoint. So what that actually changed, it changed a lot of things in my life, and it wasn't all that long ago, but it really changed my perspective on people and on business. And it gave a whole lot less meaning to the raw dollar amount of things, and a whole lot more meaning to individuals and like the greater purpose of anything that you're doing. Sure. You mentioned before, I think it was before we actually hit record on this interview, but you mentioned excellence. I think I now believe in excellence more as a Christian.
Sure.
And I don't necessarily think I held excellence on such a high level in everything that I do as I do now. So that was a big turning point for me. Of course, there's other things that have happened in my life, but that probably had the most clearly, if you become a Christian, a widespread effect on my life.
Sure. And I'll just stop here and say, obviously I make no apologies about being faith-based. That's where the Medicare Minister persona comes from. I've been in the ministry for over 20 years, a Christian for a long time. But I agree with you, Kenny. I think a lot of people had just been, if I could use this very loosely when I say this, have been sold a brand of Christianity that's truly not biblical. And I teach this when I do motivational things or whenever I'm, speaking. I live from a posture every day that I get up, that I'm fully loved and that I'm fully accepted by this divine creator. And I live out of that. I don't live for it, Kenny, right? See, a lot of people try to earn brownie points with God. I don't try to earn brownie points with God. I live from a place of being his son, fully loved, fully accepted. And I truly believe this, and this may be over sensationalizing a little bit, but I believe all of heaven is cheering me on every day. And so it causes me to get up and want to make a difference, live on purpose, make an impact in people's lives, because I believe that we will never find fulfillment until we do, because our divine creator wired us that way. And it sounds like you've been able to tap into some of that, in this season of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that. And listen, if you're not a Christian today, you can learn something from that, because maybe it's something spiritual that you need to have a breakthrough in your life, right? That you got to believe in something higher than yourself. And I like to say this, and this can be very blunt. You can send Kenny the hate email if you want to. But listen, if you are your own God, you're going to be a very miserable person. Trust me, Rob's been there, right?
So I would love to just share one last thing along that.
Sure, man. Come on.
Like a lot of people, whenever I would be encountered, or maybe whether you want to call it God kind of knocking at my door, or somebody encouraging me, hey, come to church with me. Have you thought about this? Do you believe in this? I think it was C.S. Lewis. I don't know who exactly said this. Maybe it was Timothy Keller, but it just really resonated with me, and it changed my mindset. So what it was, though, was like, it is just as big, if not bigger, of a leap of faith to decide that you do not believe in God, or a God in general, as it is to be a person of faith. And I don't mean that specifically to even any one faith. I would just say that clicked with me. I was like, it really is. Like, it really, what the world sells us has no more promise or value than anything else that you may consider, right? You're taking a giant leap of faith if you just kind of live as your own God or live for the world. And that kind of gave me intellectual reassurance that, okay, this makes, it's kind of common sense I got to make a jump. I got to jump a leap either way. So I better make a decision here instead of trying to float in the middle. So for what that's
I actually had lunch with someone recently, and they were talking about how they were their cousin from up north was an atheist, and they came down and basically had this for lack of better words, talk about religion till 4 a.m. And he was just sharing this with me. And I kind of said something similar. I have to put it in my own terms, because I'd love to be as intellectual as Tim Keller, but I'm not. He's more intellectual in his pinky probably than I'll ever be. I love some Tim Keller, but I told him this way. I said, if we really think about it, the Christian faith really is silly. Like, if you really think about it, like if you really just we're just stripping away all subjectiveness here. We're just being very objective. I can see how people think Christianity can be silly from an intellectual standpoint. But I also think from an intellectual standpoint, how a person of non-faith, it looks very silly to not believe in anything and just believe that you're just happenstance and that you're just, spontaneously combusted, or you were here, whatever the case may be. And so I told this person, every one of us have to choose our silly.
Yeah.
I chose to be on the silly side of this divine creator who says, go, Rob, every single day, and you're loved and you're accepted. And because of that, I can rise above anything that may come my way. That's my silly. That's how I live my life. And so I appreciate you, sharing a little bit of that, because I do believe it plays an important part in everything that we do. And we tell people this, Kenny, here is Medicare for us is not, it's not ministry. It's not what we do. It's who we are. And so Medicare is a ministry. Insurance is a ministry. We pray with our clients. We get to seriously talk with our clients, listen to them cry. It's a ministry to us. And so if that's silly to some people, then, hey, sign me up every single time, because I'm finding fulfillment in this journey by making a massive impact in the lives of other people through insurance. So let me ask you this in regards to training agents and kind of being authentic. Who has been a mentor to you? A. B. What was the biggest thing you learned from that mentor?
Wow. So I got to be honest, I have a pretty close relationship with, relatively speaking here, with David Duford. I consider him a friend. Mm-hmm. And him and I are polar opposites personality wise. Like, I am a complete outgoing type person, right. and Dave is definitely more of an introverted type person. But I've learned a lot from him on just authenticity. I truly believe he is one of the most authentic people.
Yes. Yep.
And I believe I've learned a lot listening to his videos and in one-on-one conversations with him about fundamentals. He truly believes that no matter how the world evolves or technology evolves, he really believes that there are fundamental building blocks of success that if you just stick to and you put in the work and you don't overthink it, that can lead to success. And so I've kind of gleaned from that mindset that it doesn't have to be fancy always. It doesn't have to be sexy always. Yeah. Sometimes it can just be simple and raw and honest steps to be successful in this business. Sure. And so that's one person in my industry that I've learned from. But then there's also somebody I still talk to this day from the captive agency that I worked at, that, he was one of the managing partners there, and he's a Christian and always was. And he probably made a lot of little pokes that helped soften my heart over time. But he was a mentor to me in a little bit of a different way. He wasn't the best insurance salesperson I ever met. He wasn't even necessarily the best insurance agent I met or insurance trainer, but he was really good at developing relationships and making people feel cared about and feel some people would call that cheerleading, but I didn't take it that way. I felt like it was really just his personality. Sure. And that, like I mentioned earlier about one of the leadership principles I find is those personal relationships. I think I learned a lot of that from him. So
sure. And I think there's a nugget to take away from this. And that is, you never know what you're infecting people with, right? And listen, guys, if you're watching this today, you're infecting people with something, whether you realize it or not, right? You're transferring to people something that is inside of you. And so that relationship obviously had a big impact on your life. And I don't consider it to be cheerleading either. If you're authentic and you truly love people, which I do, everywhere I go, man, I try to be positive, encouraging. I want people to win because you know this, Kenny, there's a lot of people in this life that have never had anybody root for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I know that bleeds over even into your channel. I've watched some of your content and you can tell that you and Ethan really, really want to help agents. Let me ask you this, and I ask everybody that comes on the channel this: if there was one word you could use to describe yourself, what would that one word be?
One word only.
Yeah.
I would just say communicator. I think that the gift that one of the main gifts that I've been given that is very obvious to me is I can communicate in the written word. I can write very, very well. I can speak one-on-one very well. I can speak in front of crowds very well. I'm emotionally I can read people really well. I'm good at communicating. I don't think that I'm the best or that I'm some, like magi when it comes to communication or anything crazy, but I do think that's one of my gifts and strong points. And I love communicating. If somebody taped my mouth shut, that would be torture for me. Like I want to hear people and I want to respond and engage. So I guess that's why I'm on YouTube, because I like talking. But communicator.
Communicator. Yeah, that's great. And thank you for sharing how that's contributed to you where you're at today. In regards to the Medicare millennials and the channel, what are some of the top struggles or barriers that you see for new agents? Maybe there's a new agent watching today and this be the first time they tune into you and they want to go to your channel, but what are you seeing agents really battle? Is there a couple of things that rise to the top?
You ready for this?
Yes.
This is going to be cheesy. I believe that the same thing that hinders a lot of new agent success is the same thing that hinders a lot of marriages. Okay. I found this out from experience recently, and that is unrealistic expectations. I truly believe that's where a lot of the failure comes in from. I'll give you a couple of practical examples. Agents may be fed a pie in the sky view of how quickly they can be successful and how they can be successful. An agent may have never done the proper research or may have been misled about the cost of a lead, which in our business, a lead for a new agent it may be the only way that they can connect with the prospect to buy their product. And so it's very important. So just expectations across the board that are unrealistic on both ends is usually what leads to failure. Had they known, hey, to succeed in this model, I need $3,000 a month for 6 months, period, no matter what, maybe they would have been successful. Had they known that it takes 600 dials a day, not 50 dials a day, right? Like I can go down the list, but they get into something and only look at the positives and don't have realistic expectations of what it really is going to take. And so I hope that for agents that come on with me, I try to give realistic expectations, because I think that minimizes your chance of failure.
No, I totally agree. I mean, when I first came in the industry a few years back, I didn't know what to expect. And a lot of times, as you well know, on social media, YouTube even, you see all these celebrity insurance people and you think you're going to be that overnight. And then it's like a sucker punch, a gut punch that you go, wow, this is really a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And like you said, I didn't know I was going to have this kind of budget, or if I was going to have to, you have to learn phone skills. As you know, we've transitioned to, I'm a face-to-face guy. I love seminars. I love presentations. So being on the phone, even though I can do it, it's not my 10. I love to be in person. I love seeing people, the energy in the room. So these are all skill sets that you have to learn. And so I definitely agree that unrealistic expectations, and it was a big eye-opener for me about 6 months into the business. And I was a slow learner when it came to Medicare, because Medicare is so overwhelming, right? It's like drinking from a fire hydrant. So I definitely agree, unrealistic expectations. So listen, as we get ready to wrap this up in just a few minutes, Give me some stats and some numbers of of you and Ethan's agency. What kind of numbers have you put up? Agents, maybe that you have underneath you guys, and just kind of maybe give those to what you feel comfortable doing.
Mhm.
But that way, give somebody something to aspire to. Maybe they're an agent like you. Maybe they're wanting to get on YouTube and share their message, or maybe they're wanting to recruit. Maybe they're wanting to help, solve these unrealistic expectations. But give us some numbers if you don't mind.
Okay, here I'm going to give you a couple different ones here to relate to some different circumstances. What's really cool about the way that Ethan and I propose new agents start in the business is that it's a function of a direct mail lead. And since it's a function of a lead, as long as you know what the cost of that's going to be up front, and then we can give you a pretty accurate idea of, for the amount of leads that you buy will cost this much, and you'll make this many sales per 10 leads, right? So it really is a mathematical function. It's not perfect, okay? So it's not actually mathematical, but you can scale it up or scale it down pretty well with a direct mail lead. With that being said, I think that I personally, my first full year in Medicare Advantage, sold over 400 Medicare Advantage plans alone. But I had already been in the business, and I was willing to spend $2,000 to $4,000 a month on leads. So that's where I talk about it's a function of leads. Because now that I'm 3.5 years later, I probably will only sell 300 or maybe even 250 plans, but it's because I also generate a lot of inbound referrals. I'm putting a lot of time, effort, and money into my local presence to long-term generate leads. And I also help train and recruit agents across the country to do this. And so I've lowered my lead flow. And as a function of that, I'm going to generate less policies from that. As far as recruiting, this is all very new to us still. We get a lot of contacts on a weekly basis from our channel. We get an average of 8 to 10 people legitimately reach out to us via our website to at least want to engage a conversation about working with us. Okay. So that, some months that may be 40 plus potential agents. Wow. However, we've had to learn how to make our recruiting funnel better and who's a good fit for us and who's not. So this channel's been around 2 years. We're just now really gaining traction. We've got about 35 active agents across the country, and maybe half of those are really making significant traction in the business. Insurance is a numbers game, so that may sound absurd to you if you're not from the insurance space, but that's not absurd, really. It's kind of the law of numbers, and we care about quality, not just quantity. So there's some numbers for you if that gives you any perspective.
Yeah, and it goes back to the whole celebrity thing. I see a lot of people boasting about premium and other things, but sometimes it's not accurate, or maybe they have all these agents, and it's kind of liking it. If I can use a church as a former pastor, that you may have 1,000 people membership, but only 200 show up consistently, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing when you're recruiting agents. And man, that's awesome that you guys have been able to make that happen. I just love that you're not fabricating or padding that. You're giving realistic expectations here. And listen, I believe God's given everyone a God-sized dream. I truly believe that. But here's the deal. Here's the challenge. Are you willing to do what's necessary for that dream to come to fruition in your life? Let me put it to you another way. And Kenny talked about investing in leads and other things. Are you willing to invest whatever's necessary for that dream to come true? Because that's what it takes. Kenny's telling you this today. I've seen it in my own life. You got to have some skin in the game, or is your dream for sale, right? Only you can decide that. And so I appreciate you sharing that, Kenny. As we wrap up here, some advice, and not just in the insurance space, but maybe just entrepreneur advice in general, or maybe just some good Kenny Lammons, life advice. What if there's somebody out there who's just hesitant on really wanting to bet on themselves, to take the plunge in whatever industry they may want to go in? Give us some advice that would inspire someone to bet on themselves.
Yeah. So I would just The best advice that I could give somebody, whether you want to get into social media where you can impact people on a larger scale, whether you want to get into any sales type profession, one thing that I've learned is that it's really easy to jump from opportunity to opportunity when something doesn't work out the way that you thought.
Yeah.
So pump the brakes, really search your heart and search your heart for what you're willing to commit to, and truly give it a good commitment. And by that, I mean, if you see the end in sight, you believe in it, you can't just give up and then try the next thing, because you're going to continuously fall short. And I wish I would have been more consistent and persistent early on in my entrepreneurial career. I'd have been a lot further along. And now I have that mindset of like, I see it, I believe it, I like what I'm doing here. I'm not, blinders are on. I don't need to hear about the next big thing, because my big thing is right over there, and I got to head in that direction only.
Sure.
Oh, that's what I would share.
No, I definitely agree. And as someone who's had shiny object syndrome, and we hear all this time, Kenny, this multiple streams of income. I like to call it multiple streams of distractions, right? A lot of times multiple streams have never worked for me until I was willing to focus on one and master one. And what Kenny's saying today is, listen, many of us, and I've been there, we've just broken many promises to ourselves, right? And we just try, but we never commit. We never stay consistent. And we don't realize that if we would just stay consistent, it compounds over time. I think that's great advice. Kenny, where can we find you? Obviously on YouTube at the Medicare Millennials, and we'll put all these links in the video description in a few weeks when this drops. But where else can we find you?
Medicare Millennials on YouTube, at Medicare Millennials on Instagram. Ethan manages our Instagram. I love the short, bite-sized content, super relevant to the senior insurance market space, and a lot of fun to follow that account. So at Medicare Millennials. And then our website is MedicareMillennials.com. Truly, if anything that I said today resonated with you, if you want to know more about my faith journey, if you want to know more about our YouTube channel or about selling insurance, if you just go to MedicareMillennials.com, there's and you fill out the contact us form that comes straight to my email. It's just like emailing me. So, and then we can connect from there.
Absolutely. As we wrap up today, any last thoughts that maybe just kind of boiling in your heart or your spirit, if you will, that you just go, man, I got to share this before we get off today?
I just want to tell you that this has been one of the funnest interviews I've ever done. And selfishly, I have a feeling that this video, or one very much like it on your channel, is going to be viewed by thousands and thousands of people, Rob. Like, I'm speaking that to you right now, because this is just a fun, good interview that's going to bring a lot of value to people. And so it's going to make its way out into the ether. And that's all I'd share. Man,
I receive it, brother. I receive it. And I'm so thankful that you came on today. And just like you, if you're watching this today, Kenny and I, we're telling you, don't let anything, opinions of people, fear, adversity, challenges keep you from sharing your unique message. Because I promise you, even if it's just to one person, I know that sounds corny, right? I know that sounds cliche, but I can't tell you how many times every month I get people to send me messages that go, man, I was really inspired that. And you know this, Kenny, you'll think, man, I've made this really crappy video. No one's going to care. No one's going to watch it. And then somebody sends you a message and goes, hey, thank you for what you do. So I appreciate that encouragement. And as we close today, I just want to remind you guys again, we do this because we want to inspire you to be the leader that God has called you to be. We want to put fresh wind in your sails, so to speak, to go one more day and say, you know what? I'm not going to quit. 2022 is going to be my year. And as always, I want to encourage you to please like, comment, subscribe below, turn on the notifications, share this. I believe this is a message that people need to hear today. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And as always, I just want to say, God bless you guys. Make it an awesome day. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you, Rob.